Twitless, what are we talking about today?
We were talking about Nameless with written by Grant Morrison and drawn by Chris Burnham with Nathan Fairbairn. This is a story right out of Lovecraft in a lot of ways. It starts with a man, an occult expert who is literally named Nameless. um, but there's clearly a deeper meaning behind that as he plunges into a dream to get a dream key for some a mysterious group of people, and then gets roped in by totally not Elon Musk to go
Yeah.
into spirited in a way into space with a bunch of astronauts so they can confront Zobaba, which is a mysterious asteroid coming towards the Earth with a mysterious occult significance and a sigil on it. And it seems to be kind of like a doomsday moment coming towards the Earth, and only this team of astronauts and Nameless will be able to potentially stop it. But as this man is currently, as this man goes in and out of dreams, we already start to question about what is actually happening, what is real in Nameless.
Yeah, it's a good point about questioning what is real. I wanted to name this book Brainless because that's how I felt reading it. Um, but mainly it was because it was so discombobulating. I
Mm,
couldn't glean what was happening. I couldn't make heads or tails of anything. There were frogs, there were lizards, there were murders. Eventually, it all converged to this main protagonist being kidnapped by what seemed like a private business, even though it seemed like it could have been
It,
government supported.
it was totally Elon Musk. It was just like I have
Yeah,
an Elon Musk stand in.
Elon Musk's floating, monitor on a little drone, basically his head being projected onto the bottom of this flying
yeah, a
device.
little quadcopter drone. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so yeah, the Eye of Elon was talking to this guy and assigning him a particular mission. It's interesting. I mean, there's an asteroid headed towards Earth, and it's got a symbol on it. Some cool little elements there. Somehow, this guy has a key, which wasn't really clear to me. He just seemed to be drawing it out on an iPad, and
Yeah.
there were, like I said, there were ritual murders and people going insane. So that's about all I got out of most of this first issue. There were a lot of images that seemed to be foreshadowing things that would maybe make sense sometime in the future. But thus far, I am most assuredly brainless after having read Nameless issue one.
You didn't like the, like, "Oi, I'm a magician," like, attitude of the main
Yeah,
character? Clearly
it
a
was
self-insert.
It's
it was so
so
weirdly and awkwardly like it came out of nowhere.
Yes.
it's so Grant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's such a Grant. It's basically like it's kind of like his take on the Hellblazer, right? John Constantine. It's that same kind of like this outsider who knows more than you bloody Yanks do, but
mhm,
I'm clearly a very cynical underdog, regardless.
right.
So we definitely have that kind of a character type who's going to be
Mhm.
walking us through this story. And honestly, we're going to need someone like that because of the territory we're going into, because there's clearly like there's like a shadow kind of cast around the earth. Like this is like I said, Lovecraftian, definitely. Um, but Lovecraftian not in just oh look, there's a tentacle monster there. Like Lovecraftian in there are forces outside of your control that make you question your reality, and are not beneficent. There's something sinister and malevolent about these things that are at the edges of your consciousness that are much bigger than you.
Hmm.
So that's the scale of things just in the first issue. Like I said, they talk about how large this asteroid is, and it's just you know it's like a small moon almost. It's this huge thing that if it gets near the Earth, it's going to cause a even without there being supernatural influence, it could probably end all life as we know it. So now the add on top of that, it's got like this magical symbol on it. So there's definitely something very ominous going on.
And
Yep.
actually, Grant's writing carries it. I like, the dialogue in a lot of the issue and um, the prose that's being presented here in the pages. So it's definitely it's well constructed, and you can tell there's a skill hand wielding this very convoluted plot. It's just the way that the pages are laid out and the imagery. None of it was very cohesive, but it does lead you into something interesting down the road. And you're once the story gets going at the end, that you can see that it's picking up and headed now into a linear direction. You're definitely interested to be carried forward as it gets ramped.
Let's take a brief pause to hear from the awesome creators joining us today and find out what cool projects they're currently working on.
Hey guys, if you love sword and sandal historical fiction with a healthy dose of ancient Roman and Egyptian fantasy mixed in, then check out Kyrie. We've got 450 pages printed so far, a fourth book on the way. Order your books today at curiecomic.com.
Modern day, classic superhero storytelling. Get The Adventures of Omega Girl, issues 1 through 5, now on Indie Planet.
Thank you to our awesome creators, and now back to the video.
Yeah, like I overall I enjoyed it because I like it when we acknowledge that the world is that there's subterranean forces beneath our modern, materialist cultural veneer. And even though Grant has a reputation of being he's a self-stylized kind of magician type guy, I guess, warlock sort of person who plays with this sort of stuff. I like reading him here, reading him play with his own toys. It doesn't feel like the toys themselves really mean anything other than he has a familiarity with sigils, I guess, and drawing things on stuff.
There's a little more. I think there's a little more there because he's
might be.
referencing Kabbalah in there. There's at the very end he references 2 spheres, the Sephiroth. I don't. This is where it starts getting uncomfortable for
That's
me.
just Judaism. That's
Yeah, why are you getting uncomfortable there?
No, I'm just when he starts getting into the occult stuff, and how he's using it, because
the occult. Don't you mean Judaism?
it's not just
You're gonna edit this out, aren't you? Roller Red?
it's not
No,
just it's
yeah.
not just that, you know what I mean? Because
No.
he's also referencing the Mayan underworld. He's also referencing the
This just
magical
feels like
magical-
Wikipedia article.
Yeah,
warlock
it's
thing. You know
not
what I
that
mean?
deep.
It's
you know?
there's a little more than that. He's actually translated Enochian in there, which is like the supposed language. That's not Latin they're speaking. Like he's pulling like an esoteric occult language to like drop. That is the occult people. When you pull your tropes, typically to do like a magical kind of story, it's like, oh, I'm gonna have like Harry Potter, right? Harry Potter is just like, I'll just take a Latin phrase and slap something on top of it. And like Grant went and was like, no, I'm gonna find like the Enochian language, like the stuff that, again, the stuff that
which
the
isn't
occult
real.
people
It's just
dig
he's
into.
just trying to be like, this is angel language from this book that's not very controversial. It's in a lot of people's Bibles. It's just not in Protestant Bibles, so it's scary. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, this is occult stuff. This is
no,
occult stuff.
yeah, no.
He
He thinks it's broadly in the technical sense. This is occult stuff, absolutely. But it's like it just feels very boilerplate.
Yeah,
Like I don't feel like I'm gonna get I don't know. Doesn't feel like he's actually indoctrinating.
you're not reading a spell book. Like it's
Yeah.
Halloween level.
Okay, so that's the thing, is that
occultism.
you may not be reading a spell book, but Grant Morrison has gone on record saying that he casts spells regularly and in his writing. So whether or not we like that's like one of his writing things is to like cast spells with it.
That's
and
fair. That's
and
fair.
he does it with he's done it with all his other work. Here you can see the fingerprints a little more obviously, and I find that a little unsettling. In a way, it's thematic because this is meant to be an unsettling work. I do personally sometimes, I I will say I found Nameless to be an interesting book. It's actually don't like the whole story, but it's something that stuck with me for a while. So I think it will be an interesting read. I am interested to hear what you guys have to say. This is a man who believes he is a shaman and believe he cured his cat of cancer by casting magic. And talks, like I said, regularly about casting magical spells through his writing. So like
So,
Yeah.
Twitless,
Oh,
are
yeah.
you suggesting that he might be casting a spell on the reader with this book?
he would see him. I think he would see if you asked him that. I don't think he. That's a very Grant Morrison.
Now I'm scared to continue reading this series.
Yeah.
What have you gotten us into exactly here, Twitless? Have you condemned our mortal souls to review
Thought this was
Nameless?
just an easy, like a supernatural sci-fi story, you know. But
Hmm.
this
Twitless,
that the spell was cast, I guess.
I am so
Mhm.
coming back and haunting you if Nameless condemns me
The
for
end.
all eternity.
The end thing I'll say is that, like I said, as opposed to Marvel, DC, Harry Potter, where it's meant to, the fantasy is very fake, you know, like Grant digs a little deeper, and that can be a little uncomfortable. So
Hmm.
that's kind of
Those
That's
frog
fair.
images in the beginning did make me very uncomfortable, I have to say. A lot of frog creeping going on in there. So,
Hmm.
yeah. I'm interested to see where it goes. So, it's
Mhm.
Grant is an impeccable writer, I think. I like his dialogue and I like the characters that he writes and I like the settings that he establishes. They're always interesting and fascinating to see how they play out and observe where his mind goes. I think the artist must have had a grand old time drawing up this script because there was a
Yeah.
lot of playground room here, I think. And it was only at the end that it really started to converge into a very tight, um, plot driven narrative. But in the beginning, this was all fun, I think, for the artist. So probably not a huge recommend because it is a little bit wayward in the beginning, and only because I guess he's trying to set all these points up for later. It's a hard sell as the first issue, you know. Like, would you really want to see more if you felt like so much time was spent going in so many misdirections with this opening to this storyline? But once you get to the end, you feel like, okay, I trust Grant, and I know that this is going somewhere that's going to pay off and be fascinating. But for somebody coming in, I think raw, they might have a hard time getting issue 2 after reading this first one.
What about you, Twitless? What's your final thoughts?
Um, like I said before, I'm conflicted. I have read this series before. Spoiler. So I know
Oh,
I'm interested to see what your guys' reactions are. Um, but like I said, I actually don't like where this series ends up. But just because you don't like something doesn't mean it's not interesting to talk about. And so that's kind of why I'm here. Um, Grant Morrison is one thing I'll say that I think he's doing really well, and this is something we've talked about a little bit, which is how to properly channel the Lovecraftian idea. This is a very Lovecraftian book, but where he parks his Lovecraftian trajectory, I think you guys are going to be very fascinated actually by what he is doing with that. I will say this issue, if you are into the Lovecraftian psychological horror, I think this does actually do enough to pull you in just because it's kind of wild and goes in these different directions. And but specifically, and I will say that Grant did do a good job of establishing that this guy's a dream diver. Kind of a little bit like Inception in a way, but you can kind of like pull ideas out and then like they have a sort of impact on the real world, at least so far. So at least knowing in issue 1 that some of these are dreams, because if he had not planted that, we would just be like, what are all these random images? What's going on? But so the fact that we know that there's a dream level to this is I think just enough of a signpost to kind of get us into, okay, I know there's going to be some real surreal elements. I know there's going to be stuff that doesn't quite make sense. I'll probably have to piece things together. But if you're into that sort of thing, I think there's definitely enough there to entice you further.
Thank you very much for checking out the video. Subscribe, like, and stay tuned for more.